gorilla in the room? That's the right term, right? Everybody wants to know about EIS and where it stands right now and how the transition is kind of what's the deal with it. So give us the broad strokes, but I think a lot of the people here know the broad strokes, and then tell us kind of the nitty-gritty about where we are right now.
Well, thank you, Francis, and good morning, everyone. It's great to see such a large audience, and we appreciate you being here. You know, I'm looking at the title. Whoever came up with this, what a great title, Building and Securing Government's Connected Future Through EIS, because I couldn't have said a goal better than how it's worded there. But first, let me level set. I have actually been out and about a little bit in our community, and I have had some folks say, hey, what's EIS? So I think that's an important question. I want to level set just a little bit that EIS is the Enterprise Infrastructure Solution. It's much, much more than just a contract, but it is a replacement vehicle for our networks and WITs and the local service agreements across the regional service agreements across the country. So it's close to that kind of gorilla, but it's a good gorilla. It's a happy gorilla.
A friendly gorilla.
A friendly gorilla.
Wonderful.
Right, and but it's 15 years. That was different from the ones I mentioned before where we just had a 10-year. We built in a lot of opportunity for modernization and transformation even, because we know the business we're talking about today is going to look very differently 15 years from now, 10 years from now. So it's a 15-year contract. It has a $50 billion ceiling. It's a big ceiling. I think Zane may have mentioned it's best in class, which really helps with that designation to be best in class. It's a big, big telecommunications market. It's really just so important that we have this vehicle in place for the modernization that Francis talked about. So with that in mind, and one other thing about EIS that I think is so important, we hear so much about folks like yourself, user-centered design and user design. So much of EIS and what it is, gorilla or not, is because of folks like yourself in the audience that helped GSA design it. We did not design it in a vacuum, and we designed it with the connected future in mind. So the idea was to make it easier, to make it faster and more efficient for getting the modernizing legacy IT systems. So in that regard, back to Francis' actual question, I think we've made tremendous progress. The contract was awarded last July. I can't believe it's been a year. And we've done a lot of work since then. We've done a lot of conversations. We've done a lot of work with the agencies. I was going to talk about it in a little bit, but talk about some of the events that we've had like this, and I think that's really helped. So back to your question, I think tremendous progress has been made from the days when somebody said, hey, what's EIS, and to where we are today.
Thanks, Kay, and I do want to come back to that point about supporting the agencies moving forward, because that's the question that I hear from folks most often too. Dave, when you look at what we know about EIS so far, what do you see as the best opportunities for people like you in industry to support not just Kay and her team at GSA, but the eventual customers that you work with at the agencies?
Yeah, great question, Francis. I'd like to build on what Kay was saying too, because her perspective is from the government. Right, and so from industry, we looked at what GSA has done, and there's change occurring, right? And so every time we, as humans, see change, it's the unknown. And so we need to touch it and explore it and understand it a little bit to see what that change really means. But from an industry standpoint, what we've seen GSA do is take 16 odd, and I don't get the stats always perfect, but 16 odd programs, right, Kay? And we've encapsulated that all into EIS. I think there were 93 different contract holders of those 16 programs. And so from an industry standpoint, managing multiple contracts takes time, energy, money, people, I'm now able to consolidate that from an industry perspective into a single contract vehicle that's very broad, but allows me to reap some efficiencies from a management side inside my own company. So great perspective from GSA, but also from industry's perspective, there's a lot of cost savings to be had because I don't have multiple contract vehicles to change. So can you rephrase your question again? Because I was...
Well, but you answered it because...
about the conversation.
Right.
The question is essentially, what opportunities do you see there in order to be able to serve the customer better?
Right.
Not just GSA, but you guys are working together to serve the agencies, and I wonder what you see there. And one of the things it sounds like you see is efficiency.
Most definitely.
And potentially some cost savings.
So that's our relationship with GSA, right, which is very important, especially in the cycle that we're in. But the one relationship that you have for 15 years, hopefully, is with the end user agency that determines that that's the best path for them to use the vehicle. And so it's really us together with GSA right now in those discussions with agencies about how to use the vehicle, what the vehicle can bring to bear for the agency, how to transform the technologies that are available to them in EIS. And so I think it starts with a really strong foundation with our relationship with GSA. I think we're well on our way in that regard. Now it's really turning to the agencies and working with them about what they're looking to do.
What's the role for a company like yours where either you have a presence already at an agency or don't have a presence at an agency in trying to work through the transition from networks to EIS? Is that a place that you see yourself having a role, or is that some place where you think it's appropriate to step back and wait for the transition to happen?
No, I think for CenturyLink, our model really has been to be a little bit more progressive, working with the customers that we have, whether they were, and we use a lot of terms with the combined company, legacy, level 3 or legacy. CenturyLink has brought a very good portfolio of customers using a variety of technologies together. And so making sure they understand what that integration of that company means to them as an agency and the contract vehicles and which way we're going, because both companies were awarded EIS contracts. Both companies have Networks Enterprise, and then Level 3 had a WITS contract. Some of our other LSAs we crossed over. CenturyLink had a Universal Networks contract. So making sure agencies understand the path forward from the combined company has been very important for us. But then it's really about technology. And so what does the combined company bring from a technology standpoint? And it's one of the world's largest IP networks. We do an incredible amount of cybersecurity for ourselves, and we've turned that into products that we bring to the marketplace. So it's really about a discovery period now with those agencies, making sure the ones that we have had relationships with understand our go-forward corporate model, and then getting new agencies to understand the technologies that we can bring to market.
I want to focus on that transition for a little bit.
Transformation.
Okay. Make a note.
Thanks,
of that.
Kay.
Okay, so I shouldn't say transition anymore?
Well, it's not that simple, obviously. Okay. And we recognize that. So there's a part of this is transition. But what we're really trying to focus on, and we've made tremendous progress, as I mentioned, since last July, is the actual transformation and the modernization. And something, as I was talking about how we built the contract itself, and tried to and did incorporate a lot of modernization and things that the agencies need in the contract vehicle itself. After we awarded, of course, the White House released the report to the President on IT modernization. That was in December of 2017. And EIS is mentioned as a contract vehicle, which, is a little unusual in the report. It's mentioned several times as a tool for modernizing. And then not too long after, Congress had the IT modernization legislation, and we had the TMF. So I said on several occasions, it really is unprecedented in my career to see, here we are at the Willard on Pennsylvania Avenue, and really both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue are working very closely together for IT modernization. So it doesn't get any stronger than that, and all the stars are aligned. So as well as we did in building the contract, I think that really helps with the transformation momentum.
What I see here is a demand's maybe too strong a word, a wish for resources from the agencies to understand what this means to them, because it's all about me, whoever it is that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So what does it mean for me? What am I going to have to do differently? What are the benefits that I'll derive? Give me some kind of meat on the bones there as far as what you're able to provide to agencies to help them make this transformation as smooth as possible.
Well, we have several things. We have agency officers, if you will, that are people in my organization that are identified to work specifically with an agency to answer their questions, to help them with transition. It's occurred to me today that that's something that I want to put some time in when I get back, is meet with each one of the 70 agency representatives that we have to make sure that, you know, I'm aware of where we are and helping our agency partners. We also have a contract we awarded that's called the Transition Ordering Assistance Contract, and several of the agencies have taken advantage of that to get support in helping get their solicitations out. So the TOA contract's been very beneficial. We held recently, again, as I talked about earlier, kind of needing to pick up some momentum in our support to the agency partners, we hosted the Meet Your EIS Vendor Day, and that was back in May, and that was a really good conversation. And several folks attended. Each one of our 10 partners, vendor partners attended. We had 10-minute teletalks and did little 10-minute spiels about, you know, each company offering, and that went a long way. And then we followed up in June with an ACT IAC event. So I think events like this, to continue getting the message out, and that working with the agency partners one-on-one is really good. And we've actually met also with the TOA contractor to talk a lot about statements of objectives, trying to get in the performance-based and how that applies in EIS. So that's just a short list, but I could go on and on.
I'm sure you could. I have every confidence that you could.
Yeah.
David, one of the questions that I think is important to consider from an agency perspective, something that I'm hearing out of the administration a lot more than I ever have heard from an administration before, is the concept of modernization that we're talking about through EIS is not going to be finished. You and I talked about this off the air last time you were on the set at Government Matters, and that is, it seems like folks like Kay in leadership roles are talking about the idea that IT modernization is now, we're thinking of it as a journey, not a destination. That's like the ultimate cliche, but it really applies here, doesn't it?
It sure does. So I'll tie the journey to, it's not really a journey, it's a lifestyle.
Okay.
Right? It's how we live. If we would go back in time, I think what we found was a very fortunate cycle between contract vehicles and technology. They were very much in sync. So, look, FTS 2001, networks, it all had a sync with technology. And so frame relay, ATM, VPN, it all had a very synchronous lifestyle. But what we're seeing now is what Kay's done is extended the contractual cycle to GSA 15 years, but technology isn't slowing. It's doing the opposite. And so really what we have to do is get in a new culture, a new rhythm around how we embrace technology, how we use technology, and it's not through contract change anymore. And I think that's how we viewed modernization in the past, was contract change.
Yeah.
So we've got to break that mold and move more towards understanding technology and how technology is happening. So I would embrace things like what Kate said, SOOs, service level agreements. Look, we're pretty smart about industry, and a lot of our companies do Fortune 100, very important things for the nation from an enterprise side. We know how to build networks. So when we look at SOOs, it's around how can I keep a network up and make it perform versus, okay, give me an option for a 2 megabit, a 10 megabit, a 15 megabit, a 20 megabit. All of those things take resources to be able to price inside of the offer back. I would rather see a requirement that says, keep my network up versus give me all the options that I could buy and let me pick. So tell me what you want me to achieve. Let me put the network together the right way from a knowledge perspective. So those are probably the things.
Well, and it's important, I guess, we're going to go to your questions after I ask this last question of Kay. It's important in a 15-year vehicle that you are as non-prescriptive as possible, and that there are as many opportunities as possible for companies to offer different solutions, because the solutions 2 years from now are going to be completely different than they are today.
Well,
or at least the things the agencies will want.
Yeah, and I'm really glad we had a chance to talk about that, because it's just another key part of the contract, and I couldn't have said it better than what David said, is that what we built into EIS was the changes that technology and modernization will demand can be made at the task order level or at the CLIN level, and not at the contract level. And I think that's a lot of the modification process. And David talked earlier about improved efficiencies and efficiency gained. Well, when you don't have to constantly modify at the contract level, there's a lot of savings, labor and cost.